Okay, this is the composition of Hydrates Lab. The first part of this is going to ask you to heat up the evaporating dish to its highest strength, at its highest strength, for 3 minutes. The reason why it's asking you to do that is because it wants you to dry off anything that's there and get rid of any impurities that could be on there, to burn them off. So I'll leave that on there for a couple minutes. I'm not going to have the video show the whole thing. We'll come back here in about a minute. I've got my evaporating dish on the pan, and I have moved the riders to where they need to be in order for it to be balanced. I can read it as 41.081. 41.081. So what I'm going to do is, since the lab asked me to put exactly 2 grams, 2.000 grams of the copper sulfate in there, I'm going to just adjust this to 3. And when I do that, I can now add the crystals until it's balanced. Okay, I went over, so I'm going to have to scoop at least one of these things out of here. See what that does. Looks like I need to take one more small one out of there. See what that does. Get a tiny one. Okay. I'm going to tempt fate and take one more really small one out. All right. I think that's it. So 43.081. So the evaporating dish itself was 41.081. Now I've got 43.081. And now I'm going to heat up the evaporating dish, and then I'm going to mass it afterwards. I won't show you the whole heating up process, but we will come back after I've got it pretty darn close. Okay? So as you can see, I've taken the heat off of it, and I'm using my crucible tongs and my spatula to kind of chop it up a little bit. And I'll show you, hopefully you can see. the color of it. But there's still a little bit of blue to it, so I'm going to put the heat back on it because I want to drive off all the water. When I first started it, I put the flame on a little bit too high at first, and they were starting to crackle a little bit, spatter. None of them got out. I'm going to continue to heat it. You can see the equipment that I'm using here. Right? I've got the evaporating dish, Bunsen burner, I've got my goggles on, the ring stand, the ring itself, the copper sulfate, Bunsen burner. I'm going to continue to chop that up until it all turns kind of like a gray color. And when this is done, I've got to let it sit. Again, because we can't have convection currents when we're trying to mass something out. I'm also going to make extra sure that when I'm done with this, that there are no crystals left on here, because that's going to throw the mass off as well. Okay? So when we come back, we'll be ready to mass it again. So I've got my evaporating dish, and hopefully you can see that there's really no blue color there at all. I don't want to leave this out too very long because water will get drawn in there and it's going to mess up my mass again. At the same time, I've got to make sure it's relatively cool so it doesn't cause convection currents. So I've got it back on the scale, and I'm going to mass it up again. Okay, we're pretty close. A little more. That might be it. Give it a second. A little low. Okay, we're going to call it at 42.351. 42.351. 42.351. So essentially that's it. We just have to do the calculations part next. Okay, so this is the last part of the video for the composition of Hydrates Lab. I will post this paper, and you've already seen what the lab is. Make sure on this that you are listing all of these equipment, all of the equipment. All of these are part of it, including this. It's equipment under materials. You can put materials here and then include the equipment under the materials as we normally do for a lab. The procedure is there. You know not to list it by number, and you don't copy that, right? So you already saw the lab happen. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to show you the data, give you the data, and then we're going to do one more calculation. So this is 41.081 grams. That's the mass of the evaporating dish. Mass of the evaporating dish plus the hydrate, the crystals that I put in there, I put exactly 2.000 grams. Now up here it says 2.00 grams. Make sure you put 0.000 grams. Okay? You should know that. So I'm adding 2 to this, so that's 43.081 grams. And then the mass plus the anhydrous salt. This is after I've heated it up. And that came out to be 42.351 grams. Okay? So, find the mass of the hydrate. They tell you what letters to use. I'm not going to do that. You can do that as part of your calculations. All right? Find the percent of water in the hydrate. You can also figure that out in your calculation section. You can put it under the data section. It's the mass of the water, basically what happened from here to here. And then number 4, I'm going to write on a separate piece of paper. It's not here. Number 4 is calculation of hydrate formula. So you would list it just as I have right there. And you can copy this one down. But I'm going to have you, for the TC3 kids, I'm going to have you do 2 separate ones that are in your Unit 4 packet. So hopefully you didn't throw that away. Yes, you have to do all of these questions, including number 5. Okay, those are, remember, these are the questions, and then conclusion would go last. You always put a separate conclusion describing the lab. And this one, it's all video, so you're just going to have to do your best for that. Okay, so calculation of hydrate formula. I'm going to take this out. I'm going to show you how it's calculated. There's a sheet in your packet that shows you, and I'll post that, shows you exactly how to do it. All right? So essentially, calculation of hydrate formula, I have to calculate the gram formula weight of copper sulfate. Okay, so I do that how I would normally do it. Copper, sulfur, oxygen. Copper, there's one of them, 63.55. Sulfur, there's one of them, 32.07. Oxygen, there are 4 of them, and that's 16. 16 times 2 is 32, that's 64 total. And my total is 159.62 grams for every mole of this stuff. Okay? Now calculating what the formula would be, because it's copper sulfate, copper 2 sulfate, and remember it goes like this, and then there's a blank for water. So really what we're doing is figuring out how many waters are attached to the copper sulfate. So here's how you do it. You take the mass of the anhydrate, that's how much we have after it's been burned off. Okay? So, I started with 2 grams, 2.000 grams, and this is of the anhydrate. And I'm going to subtract how much water came out of it. And that comes out to be 0.730 grams. That was the late bell. 2 minus that is 1.270 grams. So that's without water. So what I'm going to do is calculate how many moles there are of that. 1.270 grams for every 1 mole of copper sulfate. I have 159.62 grams. Cross off my grams. This is going to be a very small number, divided by 159.62. Now in these are a little bit different in that I'm not going to round any of this. I'm going to write the complete number, the whole number on my calculator, because otherwise my ratio is not going to come out very well. So 0.007956396 moles. Now I have to calculate how many moles of water there were. So here's the water. I just kind of showed you that there's 0.73 grams of water. .73 grams. 1 mole of water is 18.02 grams. So this is also going to be a very small number. 0.73 divided by 18.02. This is going to be 0.040510.544. Okay, so now what I do is I take the bigger one, the water, and I divide it by the smaller one. 0.0405 10544 divided by 0.00795 6396, and this ratio ends up being 0.00795 6396. This ends up to be 5.09. So I'm going to round that to 5. So my final for this one is copper sulfate pentahydrate. There it goes. Okay, so you can copy this by hand if you would like, or you can type it. It's up to you. Seems like it might be easier to type all that or to handwrite that and then take a picture, but it's going to be up to you. For those TC3 kids, I want you to find this sheet. I want you to find this sheet, and I want you to do numbers 1 and 2 as additional questions. It's the same setup, okay? It's the same setup as what we just did here. And the example right here shows you exactly what to do, okay? And that's it.